That's okay. Yeah, so that's where it kind of got started for me, was dance. And I did piano. I did Royal Conservatory of Music, piano, went up to grade 8 on that. So I've always been in the arts, but for me specifically, acting kind of took off around middle school when I was like doing all these school plays. And then I went to an arts high school in Toronto. I did go as a dance major, but they really pushed us to explore all avenues of our artistic expression. So I did also focus on my acting as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, it just kind of like took off. Like once I graduated high school, I was in the theater program at Ryerson and was acting there and dancing. And yeah, so yeah, that kind of summed it all up. It's always been a part of my life, practically.
Right. So, but what was it for you that like was that moment where you realized that this was what you really wanted to lean more to, or the deciding factor that this is what you wanted to do? Because you start off as a dancer, but getting into the program, obviously something had to spark that for you to really want to commit to that, at least on a full-time basis. So what was it for you that made that, what was that turning point?
To know that it was acting, I think probably in my first year in the theater program. So
Mm,
I was in theater dance, and I realized that there's kind of a bit of there's a timeline in terms of how long the longevity of a dancer's career,
right.
and that's very limiting.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I know for a fact I want to continue in the arts, and that the film and television industry, maybe it's not going to be as a dancer, not that I'm going to completely give up dancing as a whole, but I think my focus at that point started to shift and pivot more full time to acting after my first year of university.
Okay. So growing up in Canada, then are you still based out in Canada, or are you here in the States now?
Not yet. I'm in Vancouver now.
Okay. So is your intention to come over here to the States to live out here and be closer to the work out here? Or because then obviously Canada definitely has been, I would say at least in the last 20 years has been on the rise when it comes to production. So are you conflicted as far as where you want to keep your home base at, or you've already had your mind set up once you decide you want to become an actor that I want to go to America where everything is located as far as the connections are concerned and everything else associated with that?
Yeah, so I'm definitely very proud to be Canadian. I'm very
Right.
happy of that. But um, I think the ideal for me, if I could pick the ideal scenario, it would be to be able to live part time, like LA or even Atlanta. I love Atlanta.
Okay.
Part time the States, part time Toronto.
Okay.
Um, Toronto will always be home for me. My family's there. I'm an East Coast girl. Um, but that would be the ideal scenario, to be able to have the balance of both.
Oh, okay. And so, but what about Atlanta that made you that makes that's like a potential destination for you want to stay there as far as a part-time is concerned for you?
Just like there's like a community there. Also, I just love that for me, I love that there are so many professional Black people there doing such
Hmm.
great things. There's a
Yeah.
big community there.
Yeah.
And I did a tour of Morehouse College, where Martin Luther King went.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was very like, just to see the history of that. Someone was giving me the history of all these little places where at the time where obviously Black people weren't, you know,
Allowed.
considered,
Yeah.
allowed, like
Hmm.
where they would kind of hide on the campus when they were getting raided. And just all that history there just kind of like made me fall in love with Atlanta.
Was it like overwhelming when you first like went through that part of the city to learn the history of that, or was it something that you had? Were you aware? I'm not saying that you weren't aware, but were you aware of it? But then having seen that, did that have a different feeling for you, or give a different insight about how life was like for people at that time? Like, was that something that was interesting for you to kind of like perceive it in a position that you probably never would have, being somewhere else, if you will?
Yeah, like I've known about it. I feel like, yeah, in our education system we don't learn as much about that stuff, about
Mm,
Black history and other histories that are important. But actually being there just really changed my perspective. Just being there alone just really was it was overwhelming, but
Okay.
it I know it's an important part of our history that there's still gaps probably in my knowledge just because of the fact that we don't really learn about it in school, and like so the onus is really on us to seek out that knowledge.
Yeah.
And so that was so since then I've really been trying to like, um take ownership of that and take ownership of the knowledge and where my gaps are. And yeah. I don't
But
know if that answered.
no, I think that answers my question. But so while you were down there too, because I want to kind of shift gears real quickly about something that I'm curious. I was hoping that someone was in Atlanta had the opportunity to visit a particular studio out there, which is the Tyler Perry studio. Did you get a chance to check that out while you were down there?
I didn't. So this
Oh, okay.
was when I went to Atlanta and I was touring the HBCUs. That was probably in 2015, 2016,
Okay.
where I think it was Tyler Perry Studios was there, but I don't know if it was as prominent as it is now.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't get a chance to. That is also like an
Yeah.
amazing thing, like what he's doing there. That is
Yeah.
amazing. I would love the opportunity to explore, but no, I didn't get to at that time.
Yeah, because I was asking because one of the things that I've heard consistently about that particular studio lot is that one, it's massive. It's actually in a lot of ways a lot bigger than I guess some more of the well-known studios out in the West Coast, California, and whatnot. You have Warner Brothers, Paramount, things like that. But this actually like far exceeds the capacity space that's available down there, which is like amazing because what was it? I think Coming to America 2 and Bad Boys for Life, or Bad Boys 3 at the time, was being shot at the same time, which, two huge productions working
Exactly.
simultaneously. And then there's obviously a picture of Will Smith, Martin Lawrence, and who else? Wesley Snipes and Eddie Murphy, all crossing paths and conversing while they're working on the set. And those are the things that like I appreciate to see, just because of just the amount of room that's available where people can just cross paths, and there's none of that. I don't know how I have heard stories, but I don't know how it is right now in the system over in Hollywood right now, as far as like people crossing paths and while working on a set. But to the over there, it seemed like it's a little more lenient in terms of like
Lenient.
people crossing paths and conversing and then just going back to work. I'm not sure if that's a Southern charm factor behind it there too, but it's something that I was curious to see if anyone has been there, what that was like there. But because I hope that one day that would be open to the public for people to do tours like they do with Paramount and whatnot. That's what I hope would happen one day, because I'm actually not too far from Atlanta, because I'm out here in North Carolina, just like 4 hours
Okay.
outside of Atlanta. So that's actually one of my first destinations I want to go to if I go back to Atlanta. But um,
Yeah.
but now that you've been involved in the industry so far, because I mean, you actually started your career, if I remember correctly, not too long ago. So in getting the ball rolling for yourself, did you, I understand that you had a passion for it here, but when you started going through the process of going through auditions, and I, like every other actor, there are some hardships that comes along the way. Did you ever feel discouraged, at least up to certain points, going through the audition process and then being close to certain gigs and then not, or just getting a flat out rejection from the starting point? Did that ever change your perception about how you want to approach it, or if you may want to reconsider doing something else to make it a little bit more sustainable for you, knowing that this is a huge risk, but the rewards are endless if you get the right opportunity? So is something like that ever crossed your mind, going through that
Mhm.
doing that path you're taking now?
Yeah, totally. So, although I did start off in the theater program, I ended up graduating with a degree in biology and
Mm,
sociology. So I changed programs a couple of times. And a lot of that just had to do with, I don't know if it's overthinking or, the right amount of thinking, but I was just kind of thinking of the future. I mean, obviously I'm in an industry that's very precarious,
mm,
and there's no guarantee. So I kind of just wanted to set myself up with a degree that allows me to have a career in the future, to pull it out of my back pocket if I ever really needed to.
mm,
um so while I was in university, I still had an agent, I still was auditioning, but I didn't have the luxury of time to focus on training as much when I was in my biology and sociology programs. I didn't have the time to like really focus on my training and like, obviously like anything, you have to work on your craft. And I didn't have the luxury of time when I was in those programs. But it wasn't until I graduated that I was actually able to put more emphasis on actually working on my craft. And I started to see how my trajectory was changing.
Yeah.
And I was seeing the benefits of actually putting in that time in my craft.
I see. Well, so kind of shifting gears now with where you are now. So I'm curious now for you, going through the audition process for Day of the Dead and getting the gig, and then actually shooting the show, and then seeing the anticipation for it, and having waiting for people's response to that. Is there a part of you right now I think I may know the answer, but is there a part of that's nervous about it, as far as what the outcome could be, where it's if it turns out to be hugely successful, which I do hope it is successful, because I actually did enjoy the show, but is there a part of you that wonders about what the possibilities are going to be, whether to be good or bad, or maybe they're good and it may be perceived as bad at that moment, but knowing that you just don't know what the outcome is going to be. But are you excited for that? Are you nervous about it? Like, what's your mindset right now in this process leading up to the release date for the show?
Yeah, I'm definitely hopeful that the show will resonate with people and
Right.
that people will enjoy what we've done. It is a tribute to Romero, and I know there's a lot of people
Yeah.
who perhaps have their own opinions, on this idea of paying tribute, but that's really what it is. It's a tribute to this man who created this legacy of zombies, and
Right.
we just wanted to pay tribute to that. And I hope that it sits with people well. There was a lot of considerations that went into it, but yeah, going back to your question, I am a little anxious to see what people's reception is going to be to it,
Yeah.
but I'm trying not to overthink it, because I do have a tendency to overthink.
Yeah.
So
I do
I'm just
too.
trying to
Yeah.
let whatever, you're right.
Yeah.
But I try to just let things go, and whatever is meant to be, whatever is going to happen, whatever is meant to happen is going to happen.
Right.
And overall, I just hope people will love what we've done with the show.
But I mean, you're very proud of what you, because here's my question to you, because I maybe this is a two-parter, but you go through the audition process, you get the part, now you're on the set, you're shooting it, and that's a whole new ball game there, where you're actually going through the experience of the actual putting the pieces together, and then as you're going through it, does your perception change about how you're looking at yourself at this, at least at that moment, and then having to come out of the production and then waiting for the lead up to that? I mean, there's got to be a part of it that, at least for me, I think, that wonders of, if do you feel like you've matured through that process? Have you gotten a little bit more wiser to the ins and outs of the industry, as far as how production works on on the behind the scenes standpoints, you as an actor in front of the camera, and now going through this machine of the PR tour that you're doing? Well, I guess it's considered a tour, even though it's all done remotely. But having seen, going from starting from the audition process to where you are now, I mean, I'm assuming there's some things have changed for you as far as your perception of how your career path has taken you now. And I mean, are you proud of what you've been able to accomplish, or are you still kind of just reserved, just like, let's wait to see how it actually all unfolds when it's all said and done?
No, I'm very proud of myself in that I've noticed a change with how I approach the work and how I approach being on set now. I
Mhm.
mean, there's a huge difference between being, on a show as a day player versus being on a show where you're going in multiple times a week and working with the same people and getting to play and vibe off of the same people. And prior to working on this series, which is my first series regular, I was, I've done a few things where I was like day player
Mhm.
roles, or where I was like, some supporting or principal roles. But really establishing yourself on something that's a series regular allows you to get comfortable with yourself as an actor, and comfortable and more confident with your tools that you have. Um, because I think as an actor, when you're up and coming and you're doing all these auditions and trying to break into this industry, you can sometimes feel, and when you're getting all these no's,
Mhm.
you feel sometimes like self-conscious about your abilities, like whether you're really, whether you've actually, whether you, I don't know if it's whether you can do the work, or like, you just feel a little self-conscious.
It's a
But
it's a
once
layered
you,
thing, I think, for a lot of people. It's not as simple as A, B, and C. I think it's a little more complicated. That's the general
yeah,
consensus that I get from a lot of actors and even directors too that I've been able to speak with here. So I think what you're saying is pretty much on point from what I'm gathering here.
yeah, like there's no A B equals C, like A B could equals Z Y T whatever,
Mhm.
right? And like, I think when you get to actually work on your craft and your tools and massage your instrument as when you're on a set, you become more comfortable with your abilities. And when I and that translates from working on the show to now working on other things that I've worked on since then. I
Mhm.
noticed my comfortability level with being on a set has, I've just kind of like settled in more,
Mhm.
as opposed to feeling a bit more anxious going onto a set, if that makes sense.
I understand where you're coming from. So working on the set, though, obviously, considering that this is a pretty popular property, the level of secrecy that's involved with it, was that new to you too? Being involved with a project where you have to keep hush hush and virtually about everything that you're doing, even now, as you know, as we're getting closer and closer to the premiere date. Is that still new to you, or have you gotten accustomed to learning what you have to swerve away from and avoid having to answer, or learn how to readjust on have not saying things that would eventually spoil things for people? But I mean, what I'm really trying to ask is that, are you really getting accustomed to having to deal with the amount of secrecy that's involved in the responsibility that's behind taking on such a project that requires you to basically keep your mouth shut? Even though you got to talk a lot
Yeah.
about it and say great things about it, but there's a lot of other things you cannot indulge into for obvious reasons. Or so, is that something that's new for you too, and having to adjust to that?
Yeah, it's something that's fairly new to me for sure. And navigating that has been a little bit tough. Like you want to tell people, you want to tease people with enough information that
Hmm.
they're interested, but you don't want to spoil the whole thing. So
Hmm.
that's a little bit tough. So I'm really looking forward to like when the show officially comes out, and we can talk a little bit more, and I don't have to worry about spoilers, but that
Right.
has been a little bit tough.
So, are you going to watch the show, or have you guys already seen an episode or two prior to the release? Have you guys been able to get access to watch that to get a feel for the final product has been put together?
Not quite yet. No, we're
Really,
trying to get our no.
really? Oh my! I
Everybody
thought you guys be
we've
the
been
first in line to get to see that sort of stuff. Oh man, okay. I feel kind of bad now. You know,
I know, because have you seen everything already?
I've seen a good chunk of it. Because
Yeah.
there was a lot of it had to do with my timing, but I was surprised that I got through. I think the first 5 episodes, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and as I was watching this, I was actually surprised at how much I enjoyed it. And I'm being honest when I say that here,
No, for
but
sure.
but I was when I was watching it, I was there's a part of me that crossed my mind, is that because I remember, we're setting this up here and I'm watching the show and I'm thinking to myself, how much have they seen of the show, knowing what they're going to have to promote here. So it never it crossed my mind to ask that. But again, this is some things are just, I avoid not asking for for that reason, just in case if the person knows full and they can't talk about it, but just out of respect, I try to avoid it. But if you haven't seen it, then obviously I'm not sure if that's intentional for
Mm,
you not having seen it because of
maybe.
those reasons. But I mean, you were a part of the production the entire time, so obviously you have some insight for certain things. But I was just curious to see how it's all laid out and how you as the actor and everyone else involved with it, um, being able to see the final product before everyone else comes out to see it. So I actually feel a little guilty right now, to be completely honest. But well, I because I know we're gonna be approaching our closing time here, but here's what I wanted to point out to you, because like I said before in the beginning, before we officially started recording, was that I like to do my research on actors and whoever it is I'm talking to get a feel for who they are and the questions they've been asked, so I can try to avoid repeating that stuff. But at the same time, if there's an opportunity where they're in a position where they're in a conversation, or in this place a conversation where they're actually just sitting down and they're at this part of their career, and to be able to have a conversation and talk about some things that, hopefully will be of interest to you. What I would love to happen is one day for you to have a successful career, but to be able to look back at this and just say, that's where I was at that time. And look how, for a lack of a better term, green I was, if you will, about, being in this business and, where my mindset was at that time and then where you are now. So I'm hoping that this is actually the first, I wouldn't say legitimate, but the first real interview / conversation you have of this sort for you to look back on one day, years down the line. So in other words, like planting a seed now, and then hopefully someone will bring it back to your attention 10 years from now and say, you remember what you were like back then 10 years ago? Yeah, I kind of remember. Well, this is what you said 10 years ago when you were talking about your career. And that's what I hope would happen here, where you can look back at this and have something that you can literally look at and see what your mindset was at that time, and have something you can use to reflect on, I guess, as a point of reference here. So I'm hoping that this would be this for you to look back onto, hopefully have fond memories of that period in your life where you were going through, what you're going through now, and having this, the trajectory you were having with your career here. So I hope that this will add on to that experience for you, because I'm not sure, I can't recall if I find anything else outside of the standard PR interviews you've done, but I think this is actually the first one you've done of something of this sort. So I was hoping that, I think this was I wanted this to be a unique experience here for you to have that, and hopefully look back at it in fun. Even though I just repeated that, but I think you understand where I'm coming from.
No, totally.
I was overthinking it there, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think, I've done like a few interviews, like since for Day of the Dead, we've been doing quite a bit of like PR interview stuff, and it's the first time doing as many as I have been doing in this capacity. And I think it's going to be really interesting to like look back. I think that's the interesting thing. I love looking back on where I've come from and where I'm going, and if I'm meeting where the goals that I have, and to see where my head was at a certain point in my career and in my life. So that totally is very on point with what I'm hoping to take from a lot of these stuff when I watch back.
Yeah. But so going through the PR, because we're almost at the end time here, but going through the PR now, has that gotten a little bit overwhelming for you at times of, going through that conveyor belt, if you will, of having to talk with a lot of people basically the same subject matter? But is that something that that you weren't used to, or did you have to prepare for that, knowing full and well what the questions were going to be and how it's going to be approached here, considering the marketing here? Was that something you were fully aware of heading into this?
With how kind of
like you and preparing for just the, a lot like this, basically, for, tell me what your experience was like on the show. How, were you familiar with George A. Romero, and have you seen his movies? Are you a fan? Like, things like that. These are the questions that I think most people would want to ask, knowing, the property that you're behind here. But, having to be actually a part of that, that promotion there, were you aware of what to prepare for, and having to answer more or less the same questions, but also having to prepare to, and being out there for people to want to reach out to and talk to you because of this show, and having to go through that whole process of promoting this film? Because I'm wondering that I always figure that some people may be prepared for that, others may not. I'm not saying that you weren't, but I'm just wondering, like, if that's something you had to get your mindset ready to go before you actually started this promotional tour, if you will.
Yeah, I wasn't too sure like how many interviews or how busy it was going to get when it came to the PR. I kind of just like was doing a sit and wait kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
it's like being on set, right?
Yeah. Right. So I was like, all right, let's see what happens as the weeks draw near. And yeah, it has been quite busy, and it's a little bit repetitive from time to time, but I know everyone's like really excited and really geared up as we near the premiere date. So I'm just more than anything just like amped up, and the more I talk about the show, the more excited I get about it, and the more excited I'm for people to see it. So yeah, no, not quite anxious, not overbearing, not overbeared by the amount of interviews and the amount of times I answered the same questions.
All right. Well, we're actually nearing that time here for you, but I want to say thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to do this here with me, because like I said before, I understand that this is a very repetitive cycle and it can be a little redundant at times. Trust me, I've seen enough of that already. So I have been looking forward to speak with you in hopes that I could hopefully learn a lot about you. But really, my intention is to have people learn about you as a person, and hopefully they'll get to know you, and in turn be interested in checking out the show. Because it's one thing to promote the show or film and say great things about it and being asked the same questions and having to hear the same answers, but it's nice to know who I'm listening to, who I'm talking to, and really get a feel for who they are. And then in turn, my interest would peak as a result of that, is wanting to check out their work. So that's my my goal here for you. So I hope that we've been able to accomplish that here. But I really can't thank you enough for your time here, because this is actually was an absolute pleasure. I wish we had more time to be able to do this further. But I hope one day down the line we get to do this again, and I'm hoping that at that point we'll go back into this here and say, remember that conversation we had X amount of years ago? Yeah, let's do this again. We'll be right where we left off. That's what I'm hoping that would happen here. So it's kind of a long-term goal, maybe a little bit excessive, but I don't care. I believe it's something that's possible. Yeah, I agree with that too. But I don't know if you want to say anything else before we head on out here, as far as what you want to say about the show or anything else in general before we close out.
No, I just hope that everyone loves the show. October 15th, 7 Eastern.
Yep.
No, 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, it is 10 Eastern. Yeah, because it's the different. Yeah, you're right.
Right. I know. Sometimes I forget. But yeah, 7 Eastern. Oh my goodness, 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern.
Yeah.
October 15th. Hope you enjoy the show. And I can't wait to hear what everyone has to say about it.
Okay. Well, again, Natalie, thank you very much for your time here. This was a lot of fun here for me, and I appreciate you being forthcoming and answering the questions, and hopefully you had fun with this as well too. So
I did.
Well, I'm glad you did. So you have a wonderful evening. You stay safe out there, and till next time. Cheers.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.
Bye.